Welcome back to the pair program. I'm your host, Tim Winkler. Once again, I'm flying solo on this one without my co-host, Mike Gruen. Seems like he's playing a little bit of catch up from the Memorial Day weekend. So I'm gonna handle this one solo. And usually though, I do like to kick off every episode with like a little random banter back and forth with my co-host. But since he's gone, I'm just gonna riff with you guys for the random banter. So Tom and Yaniv, welcome to the pod. Quick little random item. I was doing some research and prep for this conversation around some of the more positive use cases for drone technology. And one of the things that stood out to me was drones being used to plant trees. Have you heard this before? A company called Airseed Technology, where they're flying and dropping some 40,000, trees every day, seeds basically. So I was thinking through, scenario based, if you could have a drone do like one chore around the house for you, like what would that chore kind of be? Like mine that I was thinking through would be, connecting a hose to it and maybe have it kind of pressure wash the siding would be ideal. So like, getting up on a ladder and everything else. What's something that comes to mind for you guys if you had an ability to have a drone do a chore for you at the house?
I would go with probably putting the dishes in the dishwasher, which is something that would take off. And then push the on button if possible. That would be like fantastic.
I feel you. Dishes suck. What about you, Tom?
For me, having some sort of an uncrewed system mow my lawn would be great. I've actually got a neighbor that's got one, and the ground clearance on it is so short, like it mows the grass so short that the yard isn't strong enough, so all the weeds come in. So I'm not really sure if it's doing any good or not. But
you can't adjust the height of the blade.
Yeah, this one's so small, it doesn't have really good clearance on it. So it has to mow short, but it needs to have a little bit more clearance so you can adjust the blade, like you said.
Yeah, I have seen these kind of bot mowers, but was still kind of weary about like how effective they were or how straight the lines were going to be that they do, and know the perimeter of the house. But I dig that too. Yeah, taking off the lawn work. Cool. Yeah, we'll have to continue the brainstorm here in terms of other positive outcomes. The conversation today is a little bit more on the some of the threats, right, from drones and when it's in the hands of bad actors. So we'll kind of like jump right in here and just give our listeners a little bit of a preview of the episode. So we're going to be talking about this kind of rapidly evolving threat landscape that's posed by unmanned aerial systems, specifically drones, of what kind of like once started out as a hobbyist toy and a tool for tech enthusiasts. I have a drone myself. I love it. Getting into more of like videography and photography when we travel, but these are becoming a favorite weapon of bad actors that are disrupting anything from energy grids to air bases. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic. And we've got two experts with us who are working on the front lines to help in stopping these threats before they take flight. So joining us are Yaniv Mendelson, the Director of Business Development at Echodyne, a radar tech company that's redefining situational awareness. And we've got Tom Adams, the Director of Public Safety at DroneShield, a global leader in counter-UAS security and technology. Something I'll add about Tom before joining the private sector. He spent 20 years in the FBI, including leading the Bureau's counter-UAS program. So I think that'll be a nice added perspective when we talk through from a policy perspective and things at that angle. But again, Yaniv and Tom, welcome to the pair program.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So before we get into the heavy stuff, we're going to kick things off with a little segment that we call Pair Me Up. It's pretty simple. Tell me a pairing that goes perfectly together. It could be tech related, food related, or whatever's on your mind. I'll lead us off and then pass it off to our guest. So for today's pairing, I'm going to go with garages and startup stories. So I'm actually recording this episode out of my garage here in Leesburg, Virginia. It's the very same garage where I launched this company, Hatch IT, my business over 12 years ago now. And when I bought this house, the goal wasn't really like, I need a big backyard or a fancy kitchen. It was targeted to secure a space where I could start a company. And that's what we did. So, this garage kind of saw it all from the first few hires, first kind of big sales wins, and, even like just creating our first version of our business model. And one of the first hires, actually became my business partner and is actually sitting in this garage with me as I record. So, we kind of get this nostalgic feeling every time we come back here. And so, there's something about it for me that there's an energy to it, and the excitement of those early startup days. So I'm going to go with garages and startup stories. And I think they go hand in hand. So I'll pass it over to our guest now. Tom, maybe a quick intro and your pairing.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having both of us. Tom Adams, I'm the Director of Public Safety for DroneShield. As you mentioned, we're a counter-UAS or counter-uncrewed unmanned system solutions provider. And as far as my pairing, so my roots are pretty deep in the state of Montana. So my family first came to Montana in the 1860s, well before the fictional Yellowstone characters came to Montana and ruined the state. But my pairing is, in honor of my Montana roots, are steak and potatoes. And by steak, I mean medium rare cooked steak, not well done or baked till it's dry. Medium rare steak and potatoes is my very important pairing in honor of my Montana roots.
Which part of Montana?
They originally settled in the Bozeman, Montana area, which is, I can't even afford to move there now. The average cost of a house in Bozeman, Montana is around $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, but since the pandemic, it's gone insane. And since Yellowstone.
It's Yellowstone and a river runs through its fault. Those two movies ruined my state.
Classic Brad Pitt movie, though. One of my favorites.
It's a great movie, yeah.
I love Montana. We have some team members that work out in Montana as well. And my wife and I, we did a month out in Montana. We're doing like a cross country trip and stayed in a small town called Red Lodge.
Yep.
You ever heard of that?
Absolutely.
Area?
Yeah, it's not too far from Billings and outside of Yellowstone Park.
Yeah, like the northeast entrance of Yellowstone. But yeah, I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Yellowstone and for steak and potatoes. So I feel you on the pairing. It's in no better place in the country to get a steak than Montana. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, Tom, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you. And then Yaniv, quick intro and your pairing.
Hi, thanks, Tim, for having us again. Yaniv Mendelson, Director of Business Development for Echodyne Radars. Radars is our bread and butter. We make radars for airspace awareness, drone detections, and other safety and security applications. My pairing is going to be my wife and my wife's best friend. And the reason I chose that is we just celebrated 25 years since we met. And I've actually dated my wife's best friend. That was, I should say that was before right? My wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to clarify.
Just to clarify, I didn't even knew my wife at that point. But we went up for a couple of times. It was nice, but we both realized that wasn't, a perfect match. But she was kind enough to offer me to introduce her best friend to me. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so we're talking about like 25 years ago, no social media, no, Facebook and stuff. People had blind dates, which I know is bizarre today, but we went on almost a blind date, and, 25 years later, we're still married, and she's still her best friend. So everything is in good shape. So I guess, the takeaway is a great pair can lead to a perfect pair sometimes.
I love it. That's actually the first kind of like relationship focused pairing we've had in 100 episodes. So kudos on creativity there. At first I was like, I don't know where this is going. And now I see there's a good story to it. And it's interesting because I've had friends in similar situations where that was the connection point, was like an ex, a girlfriend that introduced them to a friend. But I think that's valid because it's like, there's nobody better that's going to vouch for you than your best friend. So she kind of got a chance to say like, hey, this is a good guy. Like, give it a shot.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Well, yeah. Congrats on 25 years. That's also super impressive. And that'll wrap the Pair Me Up segment. Good pairings all around. Let's transition into the heart of the discussion. So, what led me to dialing in on these two guests to join me on this topic of countering aerial threats to critical infrastructure was an article that you two co-authored, which was titled, Why Drones Are the Bad Actors' New Toy. And in this article, you guys both unpacked kind of real world incidents from airspace breaches to at airports to military bases and weaponized drone attempts at energy facilities, and underscoring like this urgent need for layered counter-UAS strategies. And so it was a great article. I want to use this as a platform to kind of bring that article to life and highlight some of those things. So we'll mirror a little bit of that article, and then we're going to cover everything from this shift from like drone novelty to a national security threat, why critical infrastructure sites like are still very highly vulnerable. Some of these unique capabilities of radar, RF, optical detection, and then how public and private collaboration and legislative action are essential to kind of making progress here to move the needle. So let's dive in, Tom. I'll start with you. In the article, you kind of laid out a pretty sobering reality that drones are no longer novelties. They're tools for sabotage, espionage, and disruption. Walk us through kind of like how we got here and what's changed in like the past 5 to 10 years that's made this such a hot threat vector.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that's important to state, first of all, and I know Yaniv probably feels similar, but I don't want to speak for him, is that I'm a huge drone advocate. I love the technology. We talked about some examples of how it can be used and how they are being used, like, being able to plant trees or whatever the case may be, deliver blood, deliver cargo, provide situational awareness for law enforcement. There's so many great uses for them. But just like any other type of technology, there's tools that people can use to use them in a nefarious manner or even carelessly and cluelessly. And the fact that these systems are so readily available, I can order one probably on Amazon today and either get it this evening or early tomorrow. It doesn't take a lot of skill to fly many of these platforms, not all of them, but many of the platforms don't require any training. And they can carry a wide variety of payloads. And you have a way in which you can retroactively add some dropping mechanisms to some of these same systems. I can order that off of Amazon also. So the fact that these platforms are readily available, they're cheap, they're easy to use, they're easy to modify. A lot of the tactics and techniques for people that use them nefariously, those tactics and techniques really don't know any borders. And so you could watch a YouTube video one day and deploy a system similarly the next in your own location. So because of this, we really need to be able to start to understand that even though drones are a potential technology for good, they can also be used carelessly, cluelessly, and nefariously. And so we have to have a way in which we can start to detect, get situational awareness, assess, and then respond to those threats. And something I want to point out real quick to kind of guide this discussion a little bit is that when a drone is up in the airspace, it doesn't tell us whether the mission is nefarious, clueless, hobby, recreational, commercial, whatever the case may be. And so the information from these drone detection systems enable that real-time threat assessment from the operator And the only way we can do that is with information. And so that's what a lot of these systems provide, is that information which can help guide our assessment and then determine what our response is going to be, if any. So I'll just kind of leave it at that to start out.
Yeah, the incidents are becoming more and more, mainstream, right? You start to hear more and more in these, and obviously the New Jersey incidents were top of mind, but I think the ones that are heightened fear for someone like myself, right, was the Nashville incident, where I don't know where it stands today, but the man was arrested for basically plotting to attack a power substation using a drone equipped with explosives, right? And that's where you think through critical infrastructure and these tools in the hands of an everyday person with just bad intentions in mind. The outcome could be just drastically, or very severe. And so those are the types of stories that, get out into the public, and then your mind starts to wander. And so it should be something that's top of mind and should be scary for folks that aren't thinking that it couldn't happen in their area. It could. But Yaniv, I'd love to get your input. So like from the radar side, how do you think, most like critical infrastructure leaders maybe underestimate drone threats, or they don't see them coming at all?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that there's just a built-in asymmetry between the cost of getting a drone and creating that weapon versus like the damage that this can cause, right? Like it's very easy to get a drone, cost you like a couple of $100, maybe $1,000 if you want a more advanced one, and then this thing can create a damage which is excessing millions of dollars. So how do you deal with that problem where in order to solve this, you need to start investing in technologies and measure that will help you understand. And I agree with Tom, it all starts with getting data. Like the number one problem we're seeing right now is that people just don't know what is going on in their airspace. They're just not aware of it. The New Jersey incident that you mentioned, that was a great example of what happens where people actually start looking at the sky and they're thinking, hey, we're seeing drone, but it could be like an aircraft coming to an approach at, 10,000 feet, or just stars in the sky. And it just, amplify the chaos instead of actually helping, the authorities to provide a solution there. And so in order to deal with that challenge, you need to have, some sort of a technology that tells you what is going on there, right? And radar is not a new technology, obviously. It's been in use in the industry for many, many years. This is how our air traffic system works. It's based on radars, and so it was a natural choice, I think, for a lot of us to look at radar as a technology that will help monitor airspace and be able to tell, what kind of drones or aircraft are flying there. And we're starting to see much more congested airspace because everyone can get a drone and fly it out, and not everything is registered or done in a way that we can actually know who's flying what. A lot of those drones are what we call dark drone, which means they're not identified. And that's a big problem because people don't, play by the rules, especially the bad guys, right? So you can't assume that, you'll have a drone register with a number and you'll be able to track it. So you need to have some measures that potentially, cover those scenarios where you can't assume that those drones will be cooperative with a ground tracking system. So that's the kind of challenges that we're dealing with, and we try to develop technologies that can help support the use case and just protect in a better way and deal with this problem, which is just a growing problem as more and more things starts flying around us in the airspace.
Yeah, it sounds like we just lack airspace awareness, like the technology to scale that, right? Because I think that's where you start thinking about when you critical infrastructure, like how many airports are out there, how many pipelines, how many treatment plants, right? There's an endless description of critical infrastructure across the country, and how do you scale that, to track, the number of drones that are flying around these days. Something that I think was referenced in the article is like the layered defense model, and kind of dissecting this modern, counter-UAS tech stack. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like what is available to us from some of these technologies? You mentioned radar, thermal, I think was referenced, but let's unpack some of those different options when it comes to how this layered defense model comes together from a tech stack perspective. What are some of the current or more progressive approaches to this detection?
Yeah, I can kind of start out that part of the conversation. When it comes to the detection and and even when you get into the defeat side of counter drone work, it's important to note that every type of drone detection and defeat technology, they each have their own strengths and limitations. So when used individually by themselves, you have a capability, but when you start adding in layers to fill in those gaps from the limitations of the various types of technologies and begin to leverage the strengths, once you layer those approaches together, especially RF camera radar, I think are the most talked about components when it comes to drone detection. I think that gives you a really good opportunity to detect the variety or a large portion of the drones that are navigating through the airspace. Yaniv mentioned dark drones. There's most drones today are typically RF controlled, but I think we're going to start to see a shift where you're going to see fewer and fewer drones that are going to be controlled via RF and are going to be dark drones, or where they're not emitting RF signals either from the ground control station or the drone. So you're always going to have that layered approach no matter what. And then for the same reason, you have challenges with just using one type of mode for detection. It's the same way on the defeat side too. So it's always going to have to be that layered approach. It can't just be one type of system that's going to do the job.
Yeah, Yaniv, what's your take on this? And obviously it's a lot more in that radar realm, but I'm also curious on the different types of conditions that we're detecting in, and what you've seen kind of be effective.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tom about the fact that each of those sensors that are put together into a system has advantages and disadvantages, and as you want to kind of create a more robust system, you need to put a few of those technologies put together, and so that makes the system much more reliable and has better capabilities. I think what we're seeing is that we're trying on one hand be able to detect drones which could be nefarious and could be used for bad purposes, but at the same time we have drones that are flying to support agriculture activities, or DFR, which stands for drones as a first responder. So a lot of PDs are actually using drones these days instead of sending a police officer to a crime scene or to a 911 call. So there's actually a lot of good activity that is performed by drone. And so how do you enable that, but don't compromise on safety and being able to understand that these are the good drones. These are the ones which are cooperative and are part of the team that is trying to do something, versus the drones that could be part of the bad guy thing. So I think for us it's the ability to kind of map what's going on in the airspace, having the ability not just to say, hey, something is flying out there, but actually classify it and provide information that is actionable. So at the end of the day, someone needs to take all this information and make a decision whether are we going to take down this drone? Is there some pilot that we need to kind of start track and take down the drone through that? This is part of taking this information and turning it into an actionable process that ultimately is designed to reduce the that level of risk. But it's always going to be a layered approach. It's always going to be an integration of different types of technologies into one suite that is supposed to deal with that challenge.
Yeah, let's jump into that real quick, because I think it's a good jump off to talking about DroneShield and Echodyne and how these technologies are kind of coming together. So Tom, maybe we had the CEO in the US on a few years ago. So DroneShield is an alumni kind of company to the podcast. But as a reminder here, talk a little bit about where the technology is and how it's being used in production, real world scenarios, and then we can kind of jump over to Yaniv on how Echodyne is integrating with the technology at DroneShield.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, DroneShield's been an alumni in the podcast. We've actually been in the space for, I think this is our 11th year. So we're kind of an ancient company on the counter-UAS side, kind of a pioneer, so to speak. And so we've been in the space for quite a while, and have had a chance to evolve our technology over the years, and built some really robust technologies that are meant to withstand a lot of austere type environments and situations. And what's interesting about the technology and how things have evolved is that a lot of those technologies that were originally built for military based missions now have a lot of applicability on the critical infrastructure and public safety side. And although there are still some legislative hurdles for the use of some types of technologies, generally a lot of these technologies are available to critical infrastructure and public safety, and they're going to be an important part of our physical security and airspace awareness. I mean, we mentioned earlier about how drones can be used nefariously, and you think about it, they're operating in a three-dimensional airspace. You almost have to have this airspace awareness as part of any physical security type program. You have to have awareness of what's going on above and around you. But what's also interesting about how these drone detection technologies have evolved is that they're actually, although they can help provide security, be part of a physical security program, they also enable advanced drone operations for critical infrastructure, for public safety, as Yaniv mentioned, for drone as first responder. And so we're kind of really seeing like an evolution of kind of the perspective of what these technologies can do and what sectors they can enable, whether it's the use of drones or on the security side too. So there's really a broader application. Even my view of what counter drone technology would do 5 years ago versus what it is now has evolved immensely. And my aperture has really expanded quite a bit just based on what's been happening in the last 12 to 18 months.
And can you just quickly describe the product itself, just to kind of paint that visual for the listeners?
Yeah, so we've got a variety of different products. We have RF-based detection and defeat systems, both handheld, on the move, and fixed site technologies. And we also have a central C2 that we can send all of our sensor feeds to. And in some cases, it'll integrate all those sensor feeds into one user interface. But as mentioned, we don't make radars, we don't make cameras, and so we don't make acoustic sensors. And so we integrate with those third-party providers to enhance the capabilities for our customers. And so, having a partner like Echodyne is really important to us because they bring an extra level of sensor awareness that we wouldn't have ourselves. So, this counter-UAS in a way it's kind of a team sport. You have to have some other people on their team with you to help you out and to be part of that multi-sensor type, defense in depth solution. So we're glad to be working with companies like Echodyne.
Yeah, and I guess Yaniv, from your perspective, how did you guys kind of identify like this is a good fit for us from a partnership perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, we've started roughly around the same time as DroneShield about 10 years ago, and we started actually being a Seattle-based company. The first product that the company developed was actually an airborne radar that was purposed to be mounted on a drone and basically help the drone kind of navigating the airspace and avoid other targets. For drone deliveries, that was a big thing, back then with the Amazon Prime Air that just, started back in those days in the Seattle area. But then over the years, the company kind of pivoted into more of like the security world as drone became more of a threat. I think over the years, we've kind of enhanced that capability and, try to close the gap between, the fact that there's very good technologies in the defense space, right? Like there's a lot of great radars and great, tech capabilities out there, but they're all purposed into, super expensive, complicated system for defense applications. So how do you take this technology and kind of brings it into the more of the critical infrastructure, commercial and enterprise world in a way that they can actually operate something like that and, with more, affordable costs and things like that. So that gap was something that we've identified early on as a company. And the product that we developed, the radar, was taking some of the high-end specifications that you could see in the military space, but just bring it to a more of a commercial and enterprise package that could be fulfilled in such a project. And what is unique about our product just in general is the resolution that it brings into the space. So you can think about it like a high definition TV. The radar is doing something similar, creating kind of a high definition radar that can help scan a large 3D space, but provide very accurate tracks of the targets in that space. And why is that important? It's important because at the end of the day, partners like DroneShield are taking that radar data, they fit it into their system, and they fuse it with other sensor, whether it's an RF technology, whether it's acoustic, whether it's a camera. And all of that is to create a common operating picture of what's happening in the airspace. So it all starts with, first detecting that there's something out there, and then, being able to track it accurately, slew a camera towards it and help interrogate it, or just, verify that target is indeed what you think it is. And so that concept of operation is built on having those, fundamental sensors, and then having some sort of a software that packages all that together into a way that, an operator, whether it is, a prison, whether it's a police department, whether it's an airport or a port, they can actually use it and monitor their skies in a way that prevents potential, collisions or other threats that could occur in that airspace.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot. I'm surprised there's not more collisions that take place just from small planes kind of coming in contact. But from a data perspective, in terms of the amount of activity that's happening or that we're aware of, what does that look like? Or do you guys have ballpark numbers on how many drones are kind of flying around in different areas at any given point?
I think it kind of varies, and there's not really a standard for defining what a drone sighting is. I think that's part of the problem. I've seen reports of, I've on operational deployments, I've used certain systems where it'll detect a drone, and then if it goes behind a building and I lose track of the drone, and then it comes back into view again. Some systems track that as two sightings. I track it as one. And so the way in which people define these things, I think varies. I think that what I am definitely comfortable saying is I think there's more drones in the airspace than what we know, because we don't really have a broad network, or these types of systems are not yet commonly deployed. And this is kind of what happened a little bit in New Jersey. We had some suspected drone sightings that were believed to be true no matter what. And every light that was believed to be a drone was believed to be true. And so it kind of put people off onto a tangent that there's an invasion in New Jersey. when in fact there's, probably a lot of misidentified sightings of aircraft and celestial objects and things like that. But it also highlighted the fact that around our critical infrastructure, not only in New Jersey, but around the U.S., because these systems aren't as widely deployed as they should be or could be, we're not able to say, hey, well, I had systems at my electrical substation or nuclear power plant or chemical facility. We had them up. We did not detect any drones. That doesn't mean that there weren't any there, but we didn't detect any drones over our airspace. And at least gives you some information in which you could begin your investigation. Or if you did have an incident, if you've had drone detection technology up, now you can say, hey, yeah, we did have a suspected sighting. It was confirmed with drone detection technologies, and it looks like the pilot was launching from over here. We did a sweep of the yard. There's nothing in here. We didn't see anything nefarious. We looked at all of our camera feeds. We think it was just a careless and clueless person or whatever the case may be. But the point is, whatever direction your investigation goes, if you don't have detection technology up to begin with, then how can you begin an investigation or really understand what's going on in and around your airspace? So I think that's one of the big key gaps out there that I see, is that this type of technology needs to be more commonly deployed out there so that we can begin to detect and deconflict the airspace as needed.
Yeah, I think that's a good lead into kind of like the final talking point that I wanted to cover before we kind of wrap with the last segment is like this collaboration and policy piece, right? So kind of going down the government path, it's obvious that a public-private collaboration is crucial here. Tom, you kind of lived on both sides. A lot of time with the FBI. What is kind of this real challenge in getting policy to keep pace with this threat seems like it's getting quicker and quicker, right? And more folks are tuning in to sadly bad use cases for these drones. How do we kind of keep up with that threat? And what are the biggest bottlenecks here with getting policy to keep up?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the technology is evolving really quickly, but we haven't had any new meaningful counter-UAS legislation passed since October of 2018. So that's over 6.5 years. But in the meantime, the threat has increased, the technology's evolved. And so we're at a really difficult position right now. And where I see where the big issue is that I believe our lawmakers in the U.S. have a gross misunderstanding of what drone technology does and what counter drone technology does. And what I mean by that is, there are one of the inhibitors of the deployment of these technologies. There's a lot of privacy and civil liberty concerns, which I'll never downplay those because I think those are important considerations that we should always keep in mind. However, a lot of the laws that are preventing the wide deployment of some RF-based technologies is the belief that these RF-based detection technologies are grabbing people's private data, and drones don't transmit that kind of data. And so I'm not aware of any counter drone technologies that are demodulating that type of data. And so we have to really look at this from a separate lens than maybe what some of these federal laws and statutes were created for 50, 60 years ago. So we need to evolve in our thinking and, educate our lawmakers with what the technology does and doesn't do, and then hopefully get to the point where we have more meaningful legislation that addresses the privacy issues if necessary. But it also needs to address these quickly evolving threats, because right now the threat is passing us by, and we're not even doing some of the basic stuff we need to at a national level to prepare for this threat.
Yeah, it seems like a very reactive approach. It's like until something happens, let's just kind of keep status quo. But something that could happen could be so tragic that it's going to stir the pot quite a bit. That there wasn't something more proactive being done earlier to prevent.
Well, something to your point is when the New Jersey stuff was going on. The state of New Jersey, the federal government, everybody's like, hey, why doesn't anybody know what's going on? They're kind of pointing fingers at the DOJ, the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, the FAA. the politicians were. But then there's a large group of us that got on the airwaves. We're like, look, the problem isn't with DOJ, DHS, and the FAA. The problem is the legislators are holding up key legislation that would enable the deployment of these technologies more widely than they are now. And with that message going out, you started to see a shift where all of a sudden some of these politicians were like, oh, well, I need to co-sponsor this bill that's been out for 18 months that I hadn't bothered reading before. Maybe I won't point the fingers at DOJ, DHS, and FAA. Maybe I need to be a part of the solution too. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in that, and that there's ways in which we can handle it more effectively than what we have before.
Yeah, I mean, 2018, I mean, the amount of drone sales since then, right? You just think through it. Anything on the policy side, Yaniv, that you wanted to kind of touch on?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom is the expert here, but I think it's like drone is a disruptive technologies, right? Like it's just like, Uber, for instance, how that changed our day-to-day lives, right? And think about, airports and like how the airports had to evolve to support Uber, right? They had to allocate those different spaces and operate in a little bit different way than it used to be before. When it started, it was just complete chaos. No one was like, it was just a mess. And things had to evolve. And it took time. It took actually a couple of years to make those changes and respond to that from a regulation perspective. And so we're seeing the same thing with drone. But the challenge here is that the technology doesn't slow down. It gets faster and faster. And so the problem we'll need to deal with, in 2-3 years are going to be even more immense, because a lot of those drones become completely autonomous. Now you don't even have to fly it. You can just pre-program it. They use a lot of sophisticated technologies, machine learning and AI and things like that. And so we need to kind of look over the horizon, like how our world will look like in 5 and 10 years. We're just going to see much more autonomy, and, the technology is going to be there. And so we just need to figure out a way to, deal with it and make the regulation adjust, even though we know it takes more time to do it, but ultimately we'll need to do it.
Yeah, we've talked a lot on this podcast about a lot of different dual use where it comes to defense tech or space tech, or we're seeing this a lot in low Earth orbit space and just space domain awareness, where it's like the need for better detection and better tracking. You're starting to see a lot more companies popping up that are doing this. If it's radar, RF, this is certainly an area of concern. Of just collisions in space happening, but then bringing it into the drone space, like it's clear that this is a going to be a problem that continues to scale if we don't get some legislation moving quicker to help with countering some of these threats. And so I'll just going to wrap on that. I think the policy piece was the last kind of talking point. I'm sure there's a lot more that we could uncover here and talk through. Maybe we'll save it for a follow-up episode for another day. But I do want to close this out with just kind of a final segment. And it's called the 5-second scramble. I'm going to rattle off a couple of rapid fire questions to each of you. Try to give us an answer in under 5 seconds. You won't be air horned off if you don't. So you can drag it out if you want to, but some will be business, some will be personal. I'm gonna start with you, Tom. You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
All right, here we go. If DroneShield were an animal, what animal would it be?
I would say what comes to mind is a leopard, moving fast. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of kind of things that it's out trying to do, trying to hunt, survive, take care of the family. So I would say that would be my animal. That's
awesome. What's your favorite part about the culture at DroneShield?
I think it's very collaborative culture. It's nice to be involved with a lot of decisions related to products and how we take care of our customers. And so it's good to have some of that firsthand input.
Nice. What kind of a technologist thrives at DroneShield?
I think someone who can step outside the box and someone who's really I think someone who does really well in this industry is someone who's a drone enthusiast. Whether you're on the drone side or the counter drone side, being a drone enthusiast, or what I like to refer to as a drone nerd. I consider myself to be a drone nerd. I think that's an important aspect of this mission, is just really understanding the broader use of drones, the ways in which they navigate through the airspace and such are really key.
Nice. What are some of the kind of roles that you're hiring for over the next 6 months?
Oh man, it's growing. We're looking for field service engineers. We're looking for software people. We're looking for sales people, trainers. There's a lot of needs. It's growing very quickly. I'm definitely no longer a junior in the company. I've been there almost a year, and I think I'm in the middle of the stack now. We're growing pretty quick.
Yeah, we're going to continue to plug and promote some of those roles when we promote this episode as well.
Awesome.
FBI or private sector, which is better snacks?
We didn't really get any snacks in the bureau. You had to go buy your own snacks, as government. But yeah, for sure, better snacks in the private sector, 100%.
Yeah, that was a layup. I had a feeling that was going to be the answer. What's a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
I think a big one for me are the ones that really stick out to me are things related to childhood hunger, just giving kids the opportunity to be able to learn and learn on a full stomach, and not to be missing out on some of those key meals which help them to develop and grow. So I think that's a big one for me.
Well said. What was your first car?
It was a 1978 Pontiac Phoenix, light blue.
I gotta Google search that. That sounds awesome.
It's an old car, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Favorite place to explore the outdoors?
I'd have to go back to Montana for that one.
Yeah,
lots of good places to go explore there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then last one, what was your dream job as a kid?
Actually, I was an archaeologist. When I was very young, I got to see the King Tut exhibit in Seattle. And then where I lived at the time in eastern Montana, I lived I drove by the Battle of the Little Bighorn historical site on the way to and from school every day. And so that, we'd find arrowheads and other sorts of artifacts on the ranch that I lived at. And so that, my interest in the Egyptology and then just, the Native American history in Montana were big aspects of that. So I always wanted to be an archaeologist.
That's cool. Were you an Indiana Jones fan?
I was, yeah. I was good.
Awesome. All right, good stuff. That's a wrap for you, Tom. Yaniv, you ready?
Yes. Is it going to be the same questions or new ones?
Now I'm going to mix them up. So
okay. That's going to be challenging.
Taking notes. Some will be the same. First one, explain Echodyne to me as if I were a 5-year-old.
We're a group of very cool people that develop a thingy that can track anything that flies in the skies, including like superheroes and drones as well.
Well done. What's your favorite part about the culture at Echodyne?
I think that people just have the give a shit factor. Like people really care. They take things personally. They're committed to the success of the company and really ready to put the efforts to make it happen.
Nice. What are some of the types of roles that you guys are hiring for over the next 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, just like Tom with DroneShield, like we're growing pretty fast. So we have roles in sales and engineering, operations, G&A, you name it, pretty much across the board.
Nice. What's your go-to breakfast food in the morning?
Kellogg's cereal. I'm an old-fashioned guy, but I like to let them sit in the milk for a while until they get really soggy, and so I know it's
everybody's
strange,
kind of particular about their cereal,
right.
But cereal is a great answer. What was your first job?
My first job, I was a teacher in the same middle school that I went to. I came back there as a teacher. So
cool.
that was nice. Yeah.
What is a surprising hobby of yours?
Surprising hobby, pretty much everything around music. I play a little bit, like to listen to pretty much every type of genre you can think of, from classic Bach to like heavy metal. So just anything around music. Yeah.
What's a charity or cause that's near and dear to you?
I would go with the Scouts, just because the whole family is involved in that. I have, 2 kids that started as Scouts, became counselor over the year, and now they're kind of, educating the next generation. So it's kind of the whole family is involved in supporting the community, less fortunate. A lot of great activities they're doing on a weekly basis.
That's cool. We've had a lot of previous guests here that are, big into Scouts or volunteer with the Scouts. So
yep.
Love to see that, building up the next wave of men. And then last question, what's who is your favorite superhero?
I would go with Superman.
Yeah,